Car dealership ignores elderly man. Next day, he buys the company and fires the staff. The bustling car dealership in a small Midwestern town was known for its wide selection of luxury vehicles, competitive pricing, and notoriously indifferent staff. On a chilly Tuesday morning, an elderly man named Henry walked into the showroom wearing a faded jacket and scuffed boots. With his worn-out hat in hand, he shuffled toward the gleaming cars on display. The staff exchanged amused glances, clearly judging him by his appearance. Henry, a retired factory worker who had lived a simple life, looked like the last person who could afford the high-end cars the dealership proudly advertised. Salesman after salesman passed by him, their smiles fading the moment they assessed his humble attire. "Hey, Rick," one whispered to another. "You think he's lost?" Rick smirked, adjusting his tie. "Nah, probably looking for directions. Or just a warm place to sit." As Henry admired a cherry-red sports car, he caught the attention of a younger salesman, Greg, who reluctantly approached. "Can I help you?" Greg asked, his tone more dismissive than friendly. "Yes," Henry replied, his voice steady but kind. "I've always dreamed of owning a car like this. How much is it?" Greg's eyebrows shot up, and he snickered. "Sir, this car isn't cheap. Maybe you'd prefer something more affordable. Our pre-owned section is out back." Henry tilted his head. "No, I'm interested in this one." Greg's patience wore thin. "Do you even know what kind of car this is? It's a limited edition model. Costs more than most people make in a year." The other staff members nearby chuckled, clearly enjoying the exchange. One muttered, "Guess Grandpa thinks he hit the lottery." Henry didn't respond to their ridicule. Instead, he calmly thanked Greg for his time and walked out of the dealership. His departure was met with stifled laughter and whispers. The next day. The following morning, the dealership opened as usual. The staff was sipping coffee, cracking jokes, and preparing for another day of sales. However, their routine was abruptly interrupted when a convoy of black SUVs pulled into the lot. The employees watched curiously as a group of sharply dressed individuals exited the vehicles, followed by none other than Henry. Gone was the worn-out jacket and hat. He now wore a tailored suit and carried an air of authority. Greg, the young salesman, turned pale. "What the—" The group marched into the dealership, and Henry strode directly to the manager's office. A few minutes later, the manager, Mr. Lewis, emerged, his face flushed and his demeanor visibly shaken. "Everyone, gather around," Mr. Lewis called out, his voice trembling slightly. The employees shuffled over, murmuring among themselves. Henry stood beside Mr. Lewis, his calm expression a stark contrast to the chaos brewing in the room. "Allow me to introduce Mr. Henry Walker," Mr. Lewis said, his voice strained. "He is the new owner of this dealership." Gasps echoed through the showroom. The same man they had mocked the day before now owned the very business they worked for. A man with a mission. Henry stepped forward. "Yesterday, I came here as a customer, hoping to fulfill a dream I've had for years. But instead of being treated with respect, I was met with judgment and ridicule. I saw firsthand how this dealership operates, and I didn't like it." He paused, letting his words sink in. The staff stood in stunned silence, their arrogance now replaced with nervousness. "Let me tell you a little about myself," Henry continued. "I may not look like much, but I've worked hard all my life. I saved every penny I earned, and I made some smart investments. That's why I was able to buy this dealership." He looked directly at Greg. "And that's why I'm here to make some changes." A humbling day for the staff. Henry began by addressing the behavior he had witnessed. He called out the toxic culture of judgment and superficiality that permeated the dealership. Then, one by one, he asked the staff to recount their interactions with customers. Most faltered under his scrutiny, their arrogance replaced with regret. "Greg," Henry said, fixing his gaze on the young salesman. "Do you remember what you said to me yesterday?" Greg stammered. I I didn't mean anything by it. I was just—" "You dismissed me because of how I looked," Henry interrupted. "But let me ask you this. Is that how you treat all your customers? Or just the ones you think aren't worth your time?" Greg hung his head, unable to respond. Henry turned to the group. "Let this be a lesson. You never know who someone is or what they're capable of. Treat everyone with respect, regardless of how they look." A new beginning. Henry's changes weren't limited to words. He implemented strict customer service training, ensuring that every employee understood the importance of respect and empathy. He also introduced community outreach programs, offering free car maintenance workshops and sponsoring local events. But the most shocking change came when Henry announced that some staff members would be let go. "This dealership needs a fresh start," he said. "And that means we need people who embody the values of kindness and respect." Several employees, including Greg, were terminated on the spot. The remaining staff, though shaken, took the opportunity to reflect and improve. As the weeks passed, the dealership transformed into a welcoming, community-focused business. Sales soared, and the reputation of Henry's dealership spread far and wide. A legacy of respect. Henry's story became a local legend, a powerful reminder that appearances can be deceiving and that kindness always prevails. The same car he had admired on his first visit now sat in his driveway, a symbol of his journey and triumph. As for Greg and the others who had been fired, they learned a hard but valuable lesson about humility and the dangers of underestimating people. In the end, Henry proved that respect and determination could change not just a business, but an entire community. And for those who had laughed at him, his success was the ultimate response, a life well lived, driven by dignity and purpose.